Hello, folks. It's been a minute. I was reading about that new Mordenkainen's book. I think it comes out somewhere around May, right? I got this notice on D&D Beyond, and it said, hey, there's a new book coming out. You want to pre-order it? And I don't remember the exact title. I apologize. It's right here. It's on screen, okay? So there's this new Mordenkainen's book coming out. And as I was reading through it, it said that there's going to be like 30 races in there. Okay, I don't think all of these are new. I think what they're doing is they're taking, you know how all of these adventure books, these source books have had all these different races, right? Like the rabbit people and the fae folk and all the races from Wild Beyond the Witchlight and all these other books. Well, they're compiling all these races into one book, right? So that it's easy to kind of navigate through. And it's your go-to source when you want to determine what am I playing, right? What lineage, I should say. But what caught my eye the most is it mentioned there was a bunch of new monsters, like hundreds, I think. Let me back up. Maybe not new monsters, but just a bunch of monsters. Now, I don't know. I don't have the book in front of me. I'm not privy to whether or not these are entirely new monsters, or maybe they're just a rehash and a reskin of something already out there. I do know that they've talked about they're going to be weaving through all of the stat blocks for every monster and changing how they sort of read as you're reading through the stat block, how they play at the table. Like they're taking some of their favorite spells from various monsters and putting them into action economy, so that it's just a little bit easier for new players to kind of wrangle through the complexity of some of these monsters. But let's not just talk about what that new book is, right? I'll spotlight that. I'll cover that book later. What I want to talk a little bit about today is the spark that gave me when I read, there's a bunch of new monsters. I grabbed the monster manual off my shelf and I started browsing through it. I grabbed my Creature Codex, my Tome of Beasts. I even looked back at some older edition stuff, some PDFs I have, some older books I have of what were the monsters that maybe aren't in 5th edition or that are, but they play differently in 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition. And it got me thinking, and I thought I'd make a video. Obviously, that's what's going on here. So today's video is my 10 favorite monsters. Now, here's a few things that must be said. My number 1 is my number 1. 2 through 10, those can be in any order. As most things D&D, this is a fluid list. As more monsters come out, they might make my top 10. Among the thousands of monsters that are out there, I haven't, admittedly, used and played through every single one. There might be a surprise lurking in the depths of my monster books. There might be a monster that's out there that after I run it, it takes a spot on this list. Except for giants. Giants are always my number 1. And they have been for over 30 years. I could fill this entire list of 10 with giants, but that wouldn't be any fun. So I'm going to pick just one giant. But before we get there, one more quick thing. Remember, this is my list of favorites. I'm not saying they're the best monsters, whatever that means. Let's begin at the top with number 1. Frost giants. You might be wondering, what's so cool about frost giants? Why didn't you pick the other ones? Here's a very simple bullet list that I'll go through. I like cold regions. Frost giants to me scream Vikings. Big, badass Vikings. Frost giants are powerful, but they're not unapproachable or as rare as, say, cloud and storm giants. Frost giants might actually see play. Frost giants are smart enough to make things happen. They're giant blue things, or whatever color you want to make them, combined with these massive axes, frosty breath, and icicles for beard hair. Number 1 is frost giants. Numero 2. Number 2, the Tarrasque. Why? Why not? It's the Tarrasque, right? It's a legend, a myth, an icon. It is the poster child for exotic and monstrous power. And yes, I have used Tarrasques in one of my games. Actually, now that I think through it, I may have used them in about 2 or 3 campaigns. My most recent was centered around a baby Tarrasque. But perhaps that's for another video. Let's take a look at number 3, the Lich. And I am not talking about Rich the Lich. It doesn't have to be Jared Vodsavo or a Sararak. No particular Lich. Just any Lich. A finger-wiggling, mind-blowing, spell power type of entity. Nearly unkillable unless you've got some sort of phylactery bits in the works. It's a recurring enemy. Something that can be a great villain. Provide a lot of options for the DM to harass and essentially mud stomp your players. Number 4, the Giralon. If you knew me as a person, you'll know about my love for gorillas. Somewhere on this shelf. This is one of them, and they have 4 arms. They are, at least the 3rd edition ones were, devastating and brutal in combat. Now, for number 5, Orcs. You might be wondering why. I get it. Orcs might be too familiar, right? Too easy. Here's why. Orcs fit everywhere, and they can also run the range from world-ending power, like with an Orc chieftain, all the way down to the lowest levels. Orcs that are just bandits on the side of the road. They're grunting, they hit hard, and they're brutal during low-level fights, especially level 1. Orcs can be organized, but they can also parlay, talk to you. They can want more than just blood. But if you happen to just be needing something to Hulk smash, Orcs are an amazing, amazing fit. Number 6, a small rogue, preferably halfling or gnome. Little folk can be a nuisance. Now, give that little guy the ability to assassinate your main tank or steal a wizard's spellbook, and you have an asshole. Have your PCs encounter this guy or gal, but always make sure they escape. I've used these sort of folk to really good effect, and they drive decades of story. Number 7, Dragon. It's called Dungeons and Dragons, right? But specifically, blue dragons. Red seems a little too easy. Black seems really bad. Green, poison. I'm partial to an encounter with an ancient blue dragon flying around, circling above a massive pool of water. As the PCs wade through, you know what's a good combination with water? Lightning. Number 8, Hobgoblins. Similar to Orcs, they're usable everywhere in any game and in almost any environment. They can be on a ship as pirates. They can be along a road as bandits. They can be at the center of a war between nations. They can be among and within an assassin's guild. I love the historical bits that the books talk about, where hobgoblins essentially have their shit together, and they have a certain level above orcs of culture and organization. Number 9. There is no monster list. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the coolest monsters, the deadliest monsters, the most hated monsters, your favorite monsters, the most familiar monsters, the most iconic monsters. That list must include mind flayers. They could easily be higher on my list, but they're so punishing that they can be unfun for a lot of tables. That's why they're a bit lower. They are a threat by simply mentioning them, even if they never reach the table. A storyline that presents them as a possible encounter is going to draw attention from your players. I like this. It keeps them on the edge of their seat. Finally, we take a look at number 10, Bodocs. Ooh, these guys are juicy. I think the ones I'm talking about here are the 3rd edition version of Bodocs. Read their stat block. Go ahead, pause the video now if you need to. Google 3rd edition Bodoc. Read their entire stat block, the whole thing, top to bottom. Notice the part about this gaze thing, and then get back to me. I'll leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for watching this video. Real quick, coming soon, likely before the weekend is over, this coming weekend, I'm going to do a spotlight on this book. Take care.